Welcome to this week's bartenderhq.com podcast, and on this week's show we have a very special guest. We have Julia from the A Bar Above podcast, all the way from the US. We also have some important news on the Central Flair series, so don't miss it.
Welcome to the bartenderhq.com podcast. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at bartenderhq. Here's your host, David Eden-Sangwell.
So on this week's show, we have Julia Cox-Tunstall joining us from abarabove.com and the Mixology Talk podcast. And she has got some very important news for bartenders everywhere, and this is definitely something that you are going to want to join up to. So sit back, grab yourself a cocktail and listen. So I'm here this week with Julia from the A Bar Above podcast. Hey Julia.
Hey there, thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. And you've got a big piece of news to share with our listeners and our viewers this week, I believe. So I will let you get straight on with it. I'm not going to interrupt you, and I'm just going to let you get on with it. Let's go for it.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I mean, I think this is a project we've been working on for a long time, and I was stalking you a little bit before I came on. I saw you've mentioned our website and our podcast a couple times on your show, so hopefully we're not completely out of left field for the folks listening. But so what I've been working on in secret for a couple of months is I've yet to figure out exactly what I should call it, but I'm calling it a web-based conference for bartenders. Seems like that works pretty well. And what it is we're going to get 6 seminars with great speakers from across the industry, and we're going to live stream them on the web on April 17th and have those speakers there in the chat box for comments, and then give everybody the opportunity to watch them later as a replay as well. So it's kind of like a cheater's version of a conference where you don't have to put any pants on or anything like that.
Well, that's good, and obviously then anyone can mix whatever drink they want next to the computer. Exactly.
That's a good point. I should send out some suggested drink pairings for the summit. That
definitely
could be kind of fun.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So, what was it that sort of made you think to yourself, well, this is something that we need in the bar community? I mean, I know how difficult it is, especially for me, to get over to something like Tales of the Cocktail, coming from the UK, and we've got something over here called Imbibe, which you may have heard of, you may not have heard of, and it's a great conference that I was at last year, and you get to taste pretty much everything in the industry.
Oh wow!
So it's awesome and free for the industry. But what was it that sort of inspired you to create the Craft Bartender Summit?
Well, it's really just like what you just said. I mean, you mentioned Imbibe, and I'm familiar with it, but I've never been. Same with Bar Convent Berlin and all of these amazing events on the other side of the pond. It's just too expensive. And we've had a couple chances to get to things like Tales of the Cocktail, and we'll post it on the blog, and we'll talk about, here's our takeaways, here's what we learned. And we get all of these sad comments from bartenders in our email and in the posts themselves saying, I would love to go to this sort of thing, but there's just no way I can get the time off. There's no way I can afford the travel. I mean, it's not a cheap trip. Even coming from San Francisco, the flight is about $600 a person. So for Chris and I to get out there, it's a big hit.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, and especially for bartenders, more probably on this side of the pond, where the tipping culture isn't as developed as it is in the US, for example.
Yeah.
I think that makes a huge difference. And I suppose for the same, by the same token, in the US, for the guys that are making a lot of tips on their shifts, it's a big amount of money to lose to take a few days off.
Absolutely. Yeah, the first year that we went, Chris was still working behind the bar, and we just had to basically go without a week of his pay. And that was really hard on top of the cost of travel and the cost of the hotel and the cost of everything else involved. It was really expensive. And so this has been simmering around in our head for a couple of years now. And just hearing folks say, I would love to go, but I can't, for all of these amazing conferences, that it really made us think. I mean, the whole reason that we started A Bar Above was that, you know, folks who are in Manhattan and New York and London and San Francisco, they have access to training events because brands show up and give free training events. It's amazing. I'm so lucky to be near San Francisco because we get to do that. but so many people don't. And that's really why we started A Bar Above, was to give everybody else an opportunity to learn craft bartending techniques and skills and things like that. And so the summit is really just one more extension of that, just one more way to try to help bring this amazing content and this amazing sort of educational opportunity and make it available to everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough actually this week to go to a little cocktail training session with the Cavassier Global Ambassador, which was absolutely superb. And that was actually right in my city here in Birmingham. So really pleased with that. But there is so much information out there, and it does tend to focus around cities like London, like New York, as you say, and San Francisco, which is another city that I really need to visit at some point soon.
You need to come visit us. We'll definitely go out for a drink.
No, that sounds great. So what can people expect? I mean, what sort of length are these seminars going to be? Is it going to be a full day's worth of information? What can the bartenders that are signing up for this find out?
So the key thing for me is I'm not trying to strong arm people into to dedicating an entire day to watch these seminars. I understand everybody has different schedules and, frankly, a different level of patience for watching a computer screen all day. So what I'm trying to do is make it just incredibly easy to get the benefit of the seminars. And what that means is the seminars themselves will play on April 17th throughout the day. We haven't finalized the exact agenda and schedule. That's coming out in a couple of weeks. But there's going to be 6 seminars, and they're going to be roughly an hour long. That's what we're targeting, with about a half an hour gap in between, so you can go, restroom break, refill your drink, come back, and get ready for the next one. But again, that's a long day. That's a long day of sitting in front of your computer, and so I feel like that's a lot to ask. And that's why we're going to be providing free replays for every single one of those. You'll be able to watch it really whenever you feel like it. And then in addition, I'm hoping to be able to provide kind of a quick recap for all of those seminars as well, which we'll just email out to everybody. Because my hope is not that, I don't need you to dedicate hours and hours and hours to come and hang out with us. What I want you to do is to benefit from it. And you being the bartender anywhere in the world, I want the person who signs up for the summit, even if they can't come to any of the seminars, I want them to be able to go to their next shift and do something differently and make a better cocktail, have a better day, move a little bit forward in taking their career in another direction, just do something differently as a result of the summit. That's my goal.
No, that sounds awesome. Is it something that you think people that are not necessarily already bartenders would benefit from? People that make drinks at home, or that are looking maybe to get into the bar industry later on? Is it something that's restricted just to people that are already in the industry, or is it something that other people could benefit from too?
I wouldn't say it's restricted. I say, well, we're definitely choosing our content and our seminar topics and our speakers with the assumption that most of the people watching will be bartenders and will sort of care about the life behind the bar. But really, I think anybody interested in spirits or a bartending job or occupation would benefit from it. I think if you are a cocktail enthusiast without a bar job, you may not be interested in all of the seminars, but we're trying to have a good mix between like for example, some product education, perhaps some training around like managerial skills behind the bar, some technique stuff. So we're trying to have a mix. So if you're not an actual like a bartender by trade, I think you'll benefit from some of them, and some of them may not be apply to you at all. But on the other hand, they're all free. And so by signing up for the summit, you'll get access to all of them, and so you can really just choose what works for you.
That sounds awesome. I know I keep using the word awesome, but I think it's pretty applicable here. So you're doing a cracking job with this. That sounds really, really good, and I'm really looking forward to watching all of these seminars as well. So other than the Craft Bartender Summit, what is it that you guys over at A Bar Above do on a week-to-week basis?
Well, aside from making lots of cocktails, which I suppose is an occupational hazard of the business, What we do is, I mean, we do a couple things. We have a podcast, which I think you've mentioned before, the Mixology Talk podcast. And then we also have the blog, which we used to be just publishing things that we wrote, that Chris and I wrote. We used to do quite a bit of videos, but now we're trying to really share the stage. And so we're bringing on a lot of new writers. For the most part, I restrict our writers to people who've actually worked behind the bar. I found that if you haven't worked behind the bar, it's really hard to sort of understand the world of the bartender. I've had a few writers try, and they just don't quite get it. And so we're bringing on a lot of different bartenders to write about a lot of different topics, but we're really an industry-focused blog. But talking about the life of bartender, the skills that you would need to be a better bartender. Gosh, all sorts of things. We recently, or I guess about 6 months ago, we wrote a post about, or one of our authors wrote a post about the sort of ethical dilemmas that might come with bartending. Did you see our post about what to do if a pregnant woman orders a martini?
Yes, I did actually.
Yeah,
I remember reading that one.
Very controversial. I was a little nervous about posting it, to be honest, but I think we got some good discussion because it's kind of something that's going to happen behind the bar. Not necessarily that scenario with the pregnant woman ordering a martini, but there's going to be a situation where you've got sort of an ethical quandary, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, people that want to drive home and all of that sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's kind of what we write about. And we publish a couple times a week. The podcast is every other week, although I keep saying I'm going to try to go back to weekly. We'll see if I can get that on my calendar. Maybe after this summit. We're a little busy right now.
Well, if you ever need a guest, if Chris can't make it for a week, let me know and I'll answer your questions.
There you go. Hey, we should
we'll have some fun.
I think we had you as a guest on the podcast pretty early on, actually, but I think we're due for another visit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was, I think for me, when you came on our podcast, it was like my 8th podcast, something like that.
We're
well into the 60s or 70s now. I've lost count. I've stopped doing numbers. It seemed easier.
That's a sign. When you stop doing numbers, I think that's when you really, you've hit your stride as a podcaster.
Yeah, for sure. But I know you guys have also got some courses on your website already. So what are those about, and who should click on those? Yeah,
so this is something that actually, before we started A Bar Above, Chris came to me and told me that he wanted to put together a mixology course. And this is based on his own experience. He's been a bartender now for 10 years or so. And when he was first learning craft bartending techniques, there weren't any resources out there on the web. And he had to go and buy a bunch of books that were, first published in 1905 and learn from those. And he found that really challenging. And so this course has been sitting in the back of his head for years and years as a way to really help other people not have to do the same process he did. And so what it is it's, just to put it in the simplest description, it is how to design cocktails from scratch. It's for people who generally have an understanding of how to make a Manhattan and a margarita, and if you know how to make traditional cocktail recipes, then you're a great candidate for this course because it's a level deeper. It's very thorough. It's pretty long. I'll own that. But I think we really take it to the next level in terms of not just talking about lemons and limes, but also talking about other acids you might use, like cider or verjus or citric acid or all sorts of different components you can use, and then different sweetening ingredients, and then later on talking about the concepts of balance and substitution. And we actually, one of the things that we teach in the second half of the course, the mixology side, is basically a written formula for cocktails where you can come very close to balancing your cocktail before you even make it, which I find saves a lot of booze. It saves a lot of those iterations where you're just throwing product down the drain, which I am invested in because it saves us a lot of money.
Definitely. I mean, why are they going down the drain? Surely you can make those drinkable. That you can make,
and that's
when you're sat at home.
We usually drink them anyway, even if they're not quite right. But to your point, though, I mean, I think if you're behind the bar, or a home bartender or something like that, it does kind of add up, that iterative process, and that's kind of where the pain point was for us, was that Chris was trying to get these recipes ironed out, and just wasting a lot of alcohol. So we've tried to find a way to expedite that process. I won't say your first iteration is going to be perfect, but I do think you'll definitely do fewer tries.
Definitely be closer on that first attempt.
Much closer, yeah. There's a way, basically we show you how to map it out on paper and say, this component, this ingredient brings these components to the cocktail, that ingredient brings those components to the cocktail. Let's add those up and see where are we at, how are we going to need to balance that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that sounds really fascinating. I mean, I've been through a lot of the first course, but I don't think I've quite made it to the end of that one yet. There's so much content in there.
Yeah,
it's really,
I won't blame
really
you.
Cool. But actually, haven't you got a sheet on how to win cocktail competitions as well? An ebook, is it? Or
yeah, it's just a quick guide. I'm not sure I can fairly call it an ebook. I want to say it's about 12 pages or so. Mm-hmm. But it's based on some research that I've done, as well as attending a Tales of the Cocktail seminar on that topic. And so I put that together. And really, the key message, I think, of that book, among lots of other things, is just thinking about a competition from a brand's perspective. Since the brand is spending lots of money to host the competition, don't go to an absolute competition and use Hangar One vodka, for example.
No.
Think about their perspective. Think about what they're looking to do. This is a PR event for them, and so how can you help them shine? If I would give one takeaway for competitions, I would say that. And this is coming from somebody who's never competed, just from somebody who's done a lot of research. So that's my disclaimer.
Yeah, no, I've just started getting into the mixology comps, that side of things. Although, before I ever entered one, I was asked to go and judge one.
Oh, wow!
Which was quite fun. So I was judging for Gold of Mauritius, which is a rum that's available over here. I don't know if it's around in the States yet.
I've heard the name, but I don't see it quite often.
Yeah, it's really, really good. So give that a try if you get a chance.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited just to see Havana Club starting to appear.
I know. Yeah.
Very shortly, which I'm very curious to see Bacardi's reaction to that.
Yeah, they're not happy about it. I mean, we've got a flair competition coming out in about a week or so, and Bacardi have just been confirmed as our main sponsor for that. So,
great!
We've got Bacardi that are looking after our prizes and helping out with that sort of thing. But I think in the States, now that they've lost the Havana Club label, which they used to have over there, they've never had it in the UK because we've always had Havana Club.
Right.
So it's a little bit different over here, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what they do in the US with that.
Agreed. Yeah, I'll be curious to see. But yeah, as far as competitions go, I mean, I think it's a really great way to sort of start getting your name out there and just practice with really fun things. I mean, if you're behind the bar, there's only so much craziness that you can do in a cocktail and still being able to serve them and keep up with your guests. But in a competition, you can go crazy. You can have a lot of fun. You can, depending on the competition, some may not want too much excitement in the drink. But I think that there's a lot that you can do there, and it's a lot of fun. It's something that Chris really enjoys to do.
And there's always the opportunity to just do the craziness in the prep instead of actually behind the bar.
Absolutely.
So if you're making your syrups and your bitters, which I know you guys have got guides to all of that stuff, you can go to town, you can get whatever flavors you want in there, but you just do it before you get to the competition.
Exactly. And here's a half an ounce of shiitake mushroom shrub, for example.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to make that during the competition, but you can use it. So
Exactly. No, that's awesome. And
are you going to be entering the Courvoisier, I want to say champagne cocktail competition? Yeah,
the global competition they've launched in the last couple of days. Yeah, that was kind of the point of these masterclasses that they were running. So, I've got a little thumb drive that I need to stick in my computer and see what the full details are. But yeah, I'm going to give it a go.
Awesome. Well, definitely let me know how that goes. And let me know if you need any taste testers. I'd be happy to make your recipe and give it a try, for a friend.
Well, I'll send you the formula over, and you can work from that.
Sounds good.
So if anyone wants to find you online, first of all, where do they find the Craft Bartender Summit?
That one is easy. It is at craftbartendersummit.com. I was really excited to get that domain. It was like, I can remember that.
No, that sounds awesome. And then your main website, how people can find you on Twitter, the podcast, and all that good stuff.
The easiest place to go is just head straight over to abarabove.com. Everything is there, as well as the podcast, which is also at mixologytalk.com in case you remember the name of it. And then Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. Just look for A Bar Above, and we'll be right there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Julia. It's been an absolute blast talking to you, as always.
Thanks for having me. We'll have to do this more often.
Yeah, and all the best with the Craft Bartender Summit. So, guys, get over to craftbartendersummit.com. Just drop your email in there, and you will be saving your seat for the conference.
I hope to see you there.
So, Julia, thank you so much for joining us for this week's podcast. It was an absolute blast talking to you, and hopefully we will get together again soon, and we will get another podcast recorded, because I love the way that you guys think about cocktails over there. So, moving on from that, the Central Flair series, which we did mention in the show, and yes, we have a new sponsor. Bacardi are sponsoring the Central Flair series. Thank you so much to our local Bacardi rep. That is Aaron Stubbs. Thank you very much for all your hard work to get this sorted. I know it's been a bit of a hard slog getting everyone involved with it from all the different teams that have to sign stuff off. So thank you very much for all your work. So bartenders, if you are entering the Central Flair series, the bottles that this bar will be stocked with are all Bacardi bottles. That is the bottle that you will be flaring with on the night. Be aware it's the new style. It's not the old bottles. We're going with completely the new style. And that also means there may be a little bit of Bacardi 8 going around in terms of prizes and that sort of thing. So make sure you are there. If you've not signed up already, drop me a message on Facebook, either through Bartender HQ or on my personal page, don't mind. But just get me your details as soon as possible so that I can get all of the lists and all of the running orders and everything up and running. So we're going to call that a night for this week's bartenderhq.com podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to check out the Craft Bartender Summit online, craftbartendersummit.com. Join us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on all of the other things where we put lovely videos and stuff for you on things like Instagram and YouTube. And we will see you on next week's bartenderhq.com podcast.